So we totally forgot to start recording on that first segment. So I forgot to start recording, and Sean didn't stop me from.
Because I got a face for radio.
No, yeah. So we're coming back in on section 2 here. We'll see if we get the full thing. It's got 30 seconds left. But we'll see if we can find that first segment where we talk about who will build the roads.
Domino's will build the roads.
Domino's will build the roads. And Larry Short Full. That was a good section. But you guys missed it. So sorry. Alright, welcome back. You were listening to Outside the Echo Chamber, the Liberty Talk Hour on Rochester Free Radio, WRFZ 106.3 FM with Kevin Wilson and Sean Phelan. And we're gonna take a bit of a shift. We'll talk about some national, international news now.
Okay.
All right. What do you want to talk about first? Talk about Korea, or you want to talk about Jeff?
How about California splitting up 3 different ways?
Okay, we're gonna throw the plan out the window. Perfect. Great. Thanks, Sean. We had a plan, Sean. It's all laid out. You always ruin it and make the show more colorful.
Yeah, of
Gosh
course.
darn it. All right, yeah. All right, let's talk about California. It's great.
Northern California, Southern California, and the state of California, which would basically be like the West Coast, Los Angeles area. Yeah, that's the way they want to split it up.
Yeah, so it's on the ballot now.
Yeah.
So Californians are going to get to vote on whether or not they want to split up into 3 different states. And I think right now the polls are saying that Californians don't necessarily want to do that.
Really?
At least the majority don't. But that could change. You never know how things go. California is a fascinating state, and they embrace interesting populist ideas all the time, and this could be one of them. They got enough support to get on the ballot, and
Well, I know they've been talking about doing it here in New York.
Oh yeah, no, we talk about doing it here in New York, and it's happened a few times in history before too. So California could split into 3 states, and how the process would work is first they'd have to have their internal referendum. They'd have to have that ballot initiative. They'd have to go through and they'd have to figure out exactly where all the lines are and how services would be split up. Then they would have to get approved by Congress, because they can't just say, all right, we're 3 states now, great. Congress has to approve them. They have to admit new states into the union, because it hugely impacts politics, because they're now getting 4 new senators. That's a big deal. It's a lot of new senators for a state that used to only have 2 senators.
Good point.
So that could be a huge thing, and I don't know the politics of California well enough, but I'm betting it would probably be 4 Democrats and 2 Republicans the way it's split up there, because a lot of California is actually pretty conservative, but who knows? We'll see. And New York, there's a movement who's talking about doing the same thing, talking about splitting off New York City and Long Island from upstate.
I'm so torn on this because I'm from down there, and they generate so much in taxes, but then again they use so much in taxes. It's such a tough call.
Well, that's the hard part. So a lot of people who are part of this movement, and you'll find them, they like the name New Amsterdam, which I don't like. New Amsterdam is New York City. Yeah. That's what it was named after, but I get the point of view that from a political perspective, New York City tends to dominate state politics, and that makes it a little bit harder for upstate to get heard. People who live downstate New York City and Long Island feel like the opposite is true, that for some reason upstate gets a disproportionate amount of attention, and in fact upstate receives more funds from the state government than it gives to the state government. That a lot of our funding comes from New York City.
Right.
Which is accurate. That is the case. But a lot of the New Amsterdam folks feel like, oh, New York City is such a drain on the economy. They're just sucking all the money away from the productive upstate and bringing it down there. Sorry, guys, it's just not true. It's not the case. I understand the political argument, because the downstate politics do tend to to dominate the state. Progressive policies that come out of New York City tend to dominate the state. I get the frustration with that. But money-wise, upstate's getting the better deal. It really is. But it would be possible. Maybe there's a few folks who'd support it, who would want to kind of push that process through. But I kind of doubt it.
The Native Americans, get out.
What?
The Native Americans would be for it, telling us get out.
To get out. And,
this is ours. Get out. Go to New Amsterdam where you belong.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole other thing.
After you're done using our casinos.
Yeah, because you got all sorts of revenue arrangements there, plus other stuff, non-casino stuff too. So, but so it is certainly possible that we could see 3 Californias. It's not. We'll see how it does in the final tally, but I don't know. It'd be interesting.
You think they're going to use any kind of religious dogma to blame their mission on, like other people do in Congress and politics?
What?
Like Jeff Sessions. He uses religious dogma to exercise justify his position.
Yes. Okay. So what Sean
That's a terrible segue.
No. Yeah, that was the most ham-fisted segue. What the heck, man? All right. Yeah. So okay, what Sean is talking about? What
nobody knows
randomly
what Sean is talking about.
segued into here was Jeff Sessions when talking about the immigration policies that we have. I think he was talking about like basically how could he allow children to be separated from families, and how are you being so cruel here? He cited Romans 13. Romans 13 is, just loved by authoritarians who quote the Bible everywhere.
God has appointed the government, so you should listen to the government.
So, I mean, I have it up. Romans 13, I'll read part of it, at least a couple of the verses. If this is New International Version, so verse 1, let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment upon themselves. There's also Now,
is that before or after they stone a homosexual? And then sell their daughter.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and I mean, that section includes, therefore it's necessary to submit to the authorities, not only because of possible punishment, but also as a matter of conscience. This is also why you pay your taxes, for the authorities are God's servants who give their full time to governing. And so it's an interesting Bible verse, especially given the context of when it was written too, when Christians were being slaughtered by the state. At that time, they were being persecuted by the Roman government. So this is an interesting Bible verse, and it also contradicts other sections of the Bible, like welcoming foreigners into your land, or I think there's like literally a quote in there about how you shouldn't tear babies from their mothers. I don't remember what verse that is. So it's interesting because it's in contradiction to a lot of other stuff in the Bible. But tyrants love citing this section right here as justification to do whatever they want. Yeah. Say, all right, Christians, you have to submit to whatever we say because we're the government, and the Bible says obey your government at all times, no matter what. Yeah. But the Bible doesn't say that as a person in government, as a person in leadership, that you can do whatever you want. That's not what that says. In fact, there's quite a lot in the Bible about, as like a leader, how you need to follow the path of Christ and obey God's laws. I mean, for better or worse in some of those cases, but you have to. There's a moral obligation to serve your people. So Jeff Sessions going out and saying, basically, well, we can do whatever we want because the government says you have to submit to, or the Bible says you have to submit to our authority, is nonsense. that he can commit immoral acts, and his justification saying, "Oh well, you always have to obey the law, and you guys are in the wrong because you don't obey the law." That's nonsense.
Right.
And so I always say this too: just because something is legal doesn't mean it's right. And I don't feel like I need to listen to this particular verse. Just because something's legal doesn't mean it's right. Just because slavery is legal doesn't mean it's right. The Holocaust was technically legal doesn't mean it was right. There are lots of things that just because a governing authority says are okay to do doesn't mean it's right. And just because the government authority says something isn't okay to do doesn't mean you're committing an immoral act. Sometimes you have a moral obligation to break the laws. Governments are just groups of individuals who've made up rules and have a monopoly on violence. Sometimes it is your moral obligation to oppose them. That's what it is. I mean, in this case, he's talking about immigration. He's talking about people shouldn't cross the border illegally. They shouldn't come. They should come into the country and spend 30 years trying to get into the country legally.
Yeah, and thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Which a lot of these folks don't have, and there's been a change in rule recently where like people would try to seek asylum for gang violence or sometimes something as small as like domestic abuse. They're I'm not that small to that person that's as big for them, but they would try to come into the country and seek asylum for that purpose, and that's. Jeff Sessions has made clear is no longer acceptable, that they won't do that. That's only government repression, ironically, that you can come in and claim asylum for, which is kind of in line with how like international laws work. But there's been some exceptions for quasi-state violence and failed state violence in some of these Central American countries where you have places like I think it's. Like El Salvador, where the gang violence is so severe that people are fleeing and running for their lives because MS-13 down there is running the show in a lot of cases.
Right.
Or at least like in places it's bad enough where people fear for their lives and try to leave. And that's where you hear Republicans freaking out and being like, oh, MS-13 is up here, all these people from El Salvador are coming up and filling our schools, and some of them end up getting caught back into it because they're gang members who flee, try to live a new life, end up in like a new school, new setting, and then they get threatened with death if they don't rejoin the gang. And that's sad. It really is.
Kind of sounds like Republicans, gang, not really doing any good for anybody except for themselves. You try to leave,
What? All right. No, I don't. It's the Republican. There's a difference.
There is?
The Republicans wear suits.
Oh, that's right. That's right. They don't get the tattoos. They get suits.
Yeah, you get nice pins and Brooks Brothers ties.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes.
I mean, but that's what it is. That's how government's organized. Though it's government is a group of people, a gang, who has a legitimate monopoly on violence and tries to follow rule of law.
Are we talking about the Republicans?
Ish.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure.
No, I mean, I was talking about government in general.
Oh, because we're certainly not talking about the Democrats. They don't follow the rule of law.
No. Well, no, it does.
No. Not unless it serves their interest.
More or less. I mean, that's how it goes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you guys, we're about to come up on another break in a couple minutes, so we don't have time to get into it. But if you have been following what's going on with the separation of families and children, it's a bit more complicated than it initially seems. But the headline is that what's going on are families are being split apart, that children are being put in these detention centers separate from parents. They don't keep families together at all. And the reason why is because the parents are going out and they're being charged with the crime. They're being charged with basically illegal border crossing. So they keep their kids in these detention centers, and they have like photos and other stuff of like this former Walmart out in like Brownsville, Texas, where they're housing all these children, and it's really sad. It is, but it isn't a new thing.
No, so we did it to the Japanese. That's what I don't understand. How
no,
we can do it to the Japanese internment camps, and we're still
that's a bit different, Sean. It is a bit different. It's a Another level of totally horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Slightly different though. But
slightly justified.
But no, no, it's not.
I don't think it is.
Yeah. No. Okay. So it's anyway. When I say that it's been going on, this isn't new. What I mean by that is that at this iteration of how immigration policy has been pursued has been going on basically since like the Clinton administration escalated in the Bush eras. A lot of the photos you see of children sitting in cages, those are from the Obama administration too.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a bipartisan horror show that's been going on for decades. It's not new. There's a time when immigration shifted a little bit. Some of these things weren't going on quite as much, but it's been escalating for the past 25 years. And President Obama was part of that escalation. And I think we've talked about it before. Donald Trump is probably the only president whose rhetoric has matched the horror of the immigration process.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't sugarcoated it like some of our past presidents and our past candidates for president. And to be clear, Trump is escalating things. He is. He's trying to escalate things. He's also working through Congress, weirdly, to get DACA passed, which is interesting. But it's not necessarily new, so don't think like... I get really frustrated when I hear people say that if we just elect a Democrat, this problem's going to be solved, because it's not.
Oh, no, not at all.
It's not. The Democrats are part of the problem.
Both parties are the problem.
Yeah. And
they can't get along anymore.
The problem is the parties can't get along?
Yeah, they can't get along, and then they get along too well.
Yeah, no,
it's weird. It's like they fight, but it's like they're brother and sister. Fight, but they'll join together and join forces in a heartbeat if they get the right foe.
Yeah, because I tend to see the problem as they're getting along a bit too well.
Mm. Yeah, like I said, in certain areas they really are, and in other areas they're just ignorant as can be.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose so. All right, so we're coming up on a break, and I'm gonna do my usual thing and we'll blindly pick a Johnny Cash song. Yeah, because I got lazy. I did the research for this, and I did not bother finding a song. So that's fine. Yeah. So we'll just play this one.
Random song.
All right, we'll be back in just a few minutes and outside the echo chamber. Oh, sorry. I don't know if that would have picked that up.
What?
Oh, I said, why the fuck is this so loud?
Oh. Who cares?
Yeah. Sorry, YouTube. So we're getting all these up on the site. I'm gonna get this up today.
Okay. Yeah. So
we're gonna answer your comments. We got a comment. You need to look at the comments. Your friend commented.
Yeah, my German friend told me yes.
Yeah, I wasn't able to respond. I kept trying to respond to him. If you're listening, sorry, I wasn't able to respond at the time, and for some reason it wasn't going through, and I forgot.
All awful live.
Yeah. But yeah, then we wanna get those up. Subscribe to our show too, please. Make sure you do that. So that's helpful. We get a bunch of subscribers. We can start doing really cool stuff once we get a lot of subscribers too. We could start doing more like chat things, and I don't know. I really wish. I don't think we have the bandwidth to do a live stream as much as I would like to, because we're already live streaming over the radio.
What about getting Tony? next week.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we can do that. Is that candidate? Sure. I got a bunch of people who want to go on the show.
Oh, you do?
I do.
Right,
So you guys are getting the sneak peek.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's get him.
So I talked with former city council candidate Marcus Williams.
Okay.
He's interesting. He's actually a bit conservative. Ran as a Democrat though.
Okay.
Nice guy. Had a great conversation with him. And, a couple other folks too. I talked to some neighborhood leaders.
Okay.
So we could spend a day talking about Rochester neighborhood issues.
Cool.
Are we gonna talk about? Do you want to talk about the Cadillac Hotel next?
Sure, whatever you want, man. I was just messing with you earlier.
Jumping around all over the place. So I'm ready to talk about Korea and pulled up some articles.
Yeah, I don't like Lovely's take on the Cadillac Hotel thing.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about it. It's I'll probably make some people mad with my take.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Gotta piss some people off. Well, listen.
All right, 20 seconds. Welcome back. Again, you're listening to Outside the Echo Chamber, the Liberty Talk Hour on Rochester Free Radio, WRFZ 106.3 FM with Kevin Wilson and Sean Phelan. We're coming back, and we were talking over the break. One of the things that came up locally this week in the news was the Cadillac Hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you saw there's a bit of a confrontation there. Sister Grace and some of the other advocates out there and Lovely Warren. And just to give you some background, if you haven't been following this story, a developer bought out the Cadillac Hotel a while ago, and they're deciding to redo it because it's a mess. It's really...
It's Skid Row.
Yeah, it's a rough spot. And actually, if you can look at David Andreatta's article on his stay at the Cadillac Hotel is really interesting.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No, look it up. It just describing like what goes on in that place. It's not a fun place to be, but it is a place where a lot of people go when they have nowhere else to go.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why this part of the reason why this protest happened is because a lot of these tenants had to leave Cadillac Hotel. These people, some of whom have been staying there for quite a long time. A lot of them are receiving some form of housing assistance, and they're leaving. And this developer, it seems like, is going to be making that building space into market rate housing. So probably housing for upper
Rich
middle
people.
class. Upper middle class folks.
Yeah.
Professional types. Why is that a bad thing, Sean?
It's so many levels. All right, I'm all for the buying of the Cadillac Hotel. I'm all for the fixing up of the hotel. The transfer of people from the hotel to appropriate housing was a complete failure. The mayor's office is not sticking up for the people, even though there may be no legal standpoint. I think the mayor's office should stand up for the rights of the oppressed people, and but you don't hear a word from Lovely because she's too busy selling out, to the investing companies, to build.
To the developers.
To developers,
Right.
so she's just there talking, mouth at that point, but it's just. this gentrification that's going on in Rochester, where, we're taking over these rundown areas and we're flipping them to these, super, and I say super rich because, from most of our, aspects, it, to be upper middle class is rich now, and that's such a slim market that, we don't really have much of that here in Rochester. And yet they keep building more and more housing for this clientele that doesn't really exist in droves. They exist, but it's like they did it. They did it with Cornhill Landing. They built up that housing. Nobody I know can afford to live there. They're ridiculous prices. Then they did the other side of the river where they had the low income housing, and they went and rebuilt all that stuff by Gregory Street there.
Yeah, no, Mount Hope.
Yeah, Mount Hope. Yep. And they rebuilt that area and they did that up. And again, I don't know anybody who can afford to live in those housing over there.
Just because you don't know someone who can live there doesn't mean those units aren't filled.
No. I'm not saying that they're not filled. They're filled. But what I'm saying though is that it's like this small niche that they keep marketing toward.
Well, all right. Here's the thing. In downtown, there is still a huge demand for that type of housing, right? And so for the type of folks from like middle class, upper middle class to wealthy who want housing in downtown because it's close to their workplaces and there's stuff to do down there increasingly. And the demand for that type of housing, it has not hit its limit yet. That those units are being filled pretty quickly, from what I understand. Yeah. So there's a market for it. It's not like they've saturated that. Now, it's not to say that I wouldn't love to see like some places downtown that are a little bit more within reach of kind of your lower middle class type of situation.
Right.
But and what a lot of these activist groups are really calling for are for really subsidized housing. So they're to be able to have kind of a mix of income levels within the city center and to not like have it given over completely to the kind of yuppie professional class.
Right.
Because so those people are just going to be pushed to other areas or to the outskirts of the city. I mean, which is what happens in a lot of like European cities, especially as people get pushed to the outskirts.
Right.
In America, we used to be the city core was tended to be an area of poverty, but so I mean I tend to
I'm all for the wheels of progress.
See, all right. So when you're talking,
how.
No, all right. So when you're talking about gentrification, like to me, like that's a process that's, it doesn't. First of all, it doesn't exactly exist on a wide scale. It exists for like individuals, right? So like individual like housing, like the Cadillac Hotel, for many people who live there are probably no longer going to be able to afford to live in that location. They're going to have to move somewhere else, and that stinks. On a big scale, it doesn't actually quite happen that way, and it's reviving housing, reviving neighborhoods, and having that process is really important for maintaining like high quality infrastructure, that when you end up stagnating things, you end up creating far worse conditions than in place than what you'd have if there were some housing churn where improvements get made to the neighborhood, where things get rebuilt, where investment gets made in that, and it stinks, and it's so frustrating if you live in one of these neighborhoods. And I get it, because it means that you may get priced out of this environment and may not be able to afford your rent anymore. Homeowners, I think, is slightly different, although, and I think that's like a city problem of property taxes, but or taxes, city and county problem of property taxes going up.
Again, this is, for me, it's the how. It's the how they're doing it that I think is a problem. I mean, take like Bull's Head, for example, okay? And for those who don't know Bull's Head area, that's where West Main splits and becomes Charlie Avenue over that way, and West Avenue. I've seen photos of like years ago of the way that used to look, and the old buildings and the old architecture, which they've only recently torn down. I mean, there was no attempt to like save that area and renovate the area. They just laid waste to it, you know, and instead of saying, oh, well, this is a historic area, you know, these buildings, you know, have an architecture to them, they need to be saved. No. We'll just lay it all flat.
Maybe.
You know, and that's kind of like, it's just, no, you don't do that, you know?
I don't know. I see, with that situation, I don't know enough about the history and structure of those buildings to say whether or not they should be preserved. I mean, sometimes it's hard because, like, sometimes it's just too expensive to keep a building around.
Right,
but,
no, I understand that.
Yeah.
But you know, there was obviously no attempt for years. I saw those buildings, before they tore them
It
down.
was a mess. And now the city's reinvesting in the area, so we'll see what comes of that.
Yeah, it's to whoever, whatever developer is going to, grease Lovely Warren's palm,
Yeah. That's probably the case, but I don't know. I don't know.
You make wild accusations, but let's face it, that's what happens, folks.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. In that case, I would love to see, like, it would be cool to see that area come back.
Like I said,
too,
I think there's a more humane way of handling the situations than the way they're handling.
Yeah, well, I mean, in this particular situation with the Cadillac Hotel, a lot of the protesters were removed, and like the confrontation was in part about like the removal, and
now, see,
part of that was. And part of that was like because you can see like here in the audio, Lovely Warren saying like, well, you guys are on this person's private property, and he didn't want you there, so yeah, it's not unreasonable for the RPD to come out and remove you.
Right, but let's face it. Okay, let's say there was a libertarian mayor. Libertarian mayor would have looked for other solutions from the community.
Libertarian mayor would, to be fair, probably also say this person's private property and you can't be here.
Right, no, they'll say that, but the protesters wouldn't have already been there because there would have already been a solution. We would have been more proactive to find an amicable solution to the problem, instead of just letting this come to the protest point and then now having to go ahead and call the cops in.
I mean, maybe it's not exactly the role of government to figure out all of this stuff.
No, but still,
and government doesn't need to micromanage. Doesn't need to micromanage housing solutions, like, because to me the best way to maintain affordable housing prices is to reform zoning laws and make it as easy as possible to build, and a lot of people on the left disagree with me on that. They say, well, it should be harder, we need to control our neighborhoods, and we need to just build more government housing. But we're out of time, folks. We could probably do like half a show on that.
I know, right?
On that issue, but we're
I like the little houses,
Yeah. No, maybe we'll have to do that sometime.
All right.
But we're out. You've been listening to Outside the Echo Chamber, the Liberty Talk Hour on Rochester Free Radio. We will be back next week at 9 a.m. next Saturday. We will talk to you then.
Should have some convention news too. By then, right?
Maybe. I don't think it's the convention news isn't next week. Or the convention isn't next week.
I thought it was like this weekend coming up.